Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Fix Your Gut, Transform Your Life presentation. My name is Brandy Foss, and I am so excited to introduce tonight's speaker, Jamie Kuenzie. Jamie is an occupational therapist, precision nutrition coach, and wellness educator dedicated to helping people take a proactive, sustainable approach to their health. Jamie is a wife and a mom of three teenagers who understands firsthand the realities of balancing family, career, and personal wellness in today's fast paced world. Through her work as an occupational therapist, she helps individuals understand how daily habits, environment, and lifestyle choices influence long term function, resilience, and overall quality of life. For more than 2 decades, Jamie has been deeply involved in the wellness space, focusing on nutrition, prevention, and simplifying health in a world filled with overwhelming and often conflicting information. She partners with the Juice Plus Company, where she educates and supports individuals and families in building practical, nutrition first strategies that align with real life. Jamie is known for her ability to take complex science and translate it into relatable, actionable insights that empower people to work with their biology rather than against it. So please join me in welcoming Jamie Kuenzie.
All right. Thank you, Brandy.
You
Fingers
bet.
crossed. Can we see it?
We can.
Oh, yay. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me on a Thursday night. I know or whenever you might be watching this, I'm sure there's many other things you guys could be doing right now than listening to Fix Your Gut, Transform Your Life. So, because you are here tonight, likely that topic is impactful for you. Maybe because you're walking through something, or maybe someone you love and care about is. And so, I titled this Fix Your Gut, Transform Your Life because it is such a hot topic. And I am not going to give you guys a whole checklist of things to walk away with tonight. My goal really is to help you to see a pattern because there is one. And I feel like once you understand what this pattern is, you're going to be more empowered, that you're going to be able to implement some of the things we talk about, and you're going to start to be able to make some significant change when it comes to your gut health. So the more you know, the better you're going to be able to do. And so I want to kind of start with sharing with you all how I ended up here. Why I care about this topic in the first place? And so this is me at 11 months old. I was hospitalized with severe pneumonia. And at one point, my mom recalls the story that the doctor had said that nothing was working, and so that there was a chance they were going to need to do a trach on me. And thank God they didn't have to. But what ended up opening my airway was heavy rounds of antibiotics and steroids. And so, what I didn't understand then, and my parents didn't understand then, is that those medications completely wiped out what little microbiome I had developed by 11 months. And when you do that, when you disrupt your microbiome on early in life, then you can set the stage for an immune system that stays on high alert. And that makes sense for me. The very first 4 years of my life, I was in and out of the ER or the hospital. Back then, they didn't send mom's nebulizers home like they do today. But especially in the spring and fall, I had lots of allergies. I had asthma, exercise induced asthma. Over time, the symptoms that I thought were normal, like an I had a food allergy, allergic to poultry. I was allergic to animals, basically every seasonal trigger that you can imagine. We kind of joked that if it was ever alive, that I was allergic to it. And that, honestly, I just thought it was the genetic card I had been dealt. But underneath that, there was a deeper emotional impact that being a sick kiddo had on me. And my mom used to say, fall was my favorite season until you were born. And she doesn't mean it bad, but that little version of me took on the fact that almost like I took something away from my mom, right? A favorite, and that I was a burden to somebody. And so I did carry with me the stress and the pressure, that I don't want to be a burden to people. So I'm here tonight for moms like my mom, who, I was in the middle of five kids, and it was a lot to take care of a sick kiddo. And I'm here for anyone who's tired of chasing symptoms and wants to get to the root cause. I have the lived experience, but also the professional experience and training. My background is as an occupational therapist and 23 years of coaching people. I really do feel like I've become the version of myself that this young version wished I would have had earlier on. And so before we talk solutions, and I promise you guys we'll get there tonight, I want to zoom out because this is the sorry state of American health. We have 3 out of 5 Americans who are going to die from some kind of chronic inflammatory disease. And you're going to hear me really talk about inflammatory diseases because when I talked about a pattern, you're going to see it with that word. And so, such as heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes, chronic inflammation is linked to more than over 130 health conditions. Around 60% of Americans live with at least one chronic disease, and approximately 10% of Americans have an autoimmune disease, and about 1 in 3 Americans have allergic conditions. And so, I'm going to be direct. Like, we have started to settle for normal, like this for normal. Like, we've normalized things that should have never been normal. Chronic disease feels like it's expected now. Like, I know you probably are in conversations with people all the time, and they're just like, "Oh yeah, I got this just like my family did." But truly, that is not how God made us. Chronic inflammation is tied to such a huge list of conditions. There is a pattern, and I do want you to know, though, inflammation in and of itself is not the enemy. Like, it is a normal response and it is protective. But what happens is that when we put our body in a state that is chronically inflamed, then it's not as, it doesn't respond to perceived danger as well. And so that danger becomes our new baseline. And when we're living like that, then small stressors feel really big and recovery slows down, our energy system drops, and symptoms just start stacking. So instead of asking what diagnosis I have, the better question is, what is driving inflammation inside of my body? And let's talk about metabolic health. Between 88 to 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. Like, this is a precursor to a lot of those other problems we just talked about. Roughly 75% of adults are overweight or obese, and metabolic dysfunction is strongly associated with that systemic inflammation. And metabolic health is not just about weight, it's about how our body processes energy. It's our blood sugar regulation, it's our hormone signaling, it's how you store and use fat, and it's how well we actually produce energy. And a lot of people metabolically stressed often don't look like it on the outside, even though that's going on the inside. And when your metabolism struggles, inflammation rises. And when inflammation rises, it shifts the gut environment. And when you shift the gut environment, then you compromise the immune system. So these are not separate issues. It's like this cascade of problems. We cannot outdiscipline biology that is out of balance. So what if all of these problems aren't that we have, or so what if the problem isn't that we have so many different health issues that oftentimes we're going to many different doctors for, but the fact that we keep missing one system they all share. And this directly brings us to talk about the microbiome. And so you may have heard that term before, maybe some of you haven't, but the microbiome, if you have heard of it, you likely think of it as the gut microbiome. And that is true, and it's kind of where we're going to lean in tonight. But I want to help you to understand that any part of us that touches the outside world has a microbiome. So the skin, the mouth, the nasal passageways, your respiratory tract, your urinary tract, all of those have a microbiome because until the food, like when we intake food, until it crosses into our blood, until anything on the outside crosses our blood, we have this whole defense system that is protecting things from all of those skin and cell barriers. But the greatest concentration is in our lower intestine. And your microbiome is as unique as your fingerprint. Every one of ours is different. So we can't really compare each of our stories directly to one another because each of us has our own history. Like, you guys heard my history, like no one's is the same as mine. We have different environments that we grow up in, we move to, we live in, different foods that we eat, different stresses, different sleep patterns, different relationships, and different rhythms. So this microbiome is alive and it responds to what we give it or what we don't. So a little bit deeper into what makes up the microbiome, it is the largest ecosystem of microscopic organisms, or you could say, we'll go with that, organisms that live predominantly in the colon. It is mostly made up of beneficial bacteria along with viruses, fungi, and other microorganisms. And they work together to regulate digestion, immunity, metabolism, and inflammation. And we are talking tens of trillions of these bacterial cells. And that we actually have more of those bacteria than we have human cells. So there's more of them than there are of us. And so the goal is not sterility. And I think for a long time, and like our medical upbringing, we thought like just knock them out. We didn't understand them. But really, the goal is that we have a balance and a diversity of these good bacteria. Because if you think about it in nature, diversity creates resilience, and the same is true inside of our bodies. And I recently bought, and I don't have it directly in front of me, but I'm going to reference a really great book. I encourage you, if gut health is of interest to you, Dr. Will Bolshewitz is a gastroenterologist, and he's written several books, but he wrote one that just came out in January. He's been on many podcasts. You guys can look him up in promoting his book. But being in the medical profession, this was the first time I heard our defense system put this way. And he says that our defense system is made up of three different layers, and most of us think of it just as the immune system, when the reality is that is our third layer. So the first layer are your microbes. They're like the front line, right? They're interacting with the outside world and they're protecting us constantly. I mentioned that because this is where things are going to try to attempt to cross into the blood barrier. Layer two is the actual barrier itself. And here's why the colon matters so much. That lining is only one cell thick, one cell, whereas like the layers of our skin and other parts they're thicker. So this is only one cell and it must be protected. Layer three, that is our immune system. But think of them like first responders. They're incredible, but the goal is not to call firefighters every day, is it? The goal is to keep the kitchen from catching fire in the first place. So the same thing with our gut. Gut health is not trendy, it's foundational. But unfortunately, we're going to talk about our modern culture is weakening the diversity of our microbiome and killing them off at faster paces, leaving this lining vulnerable. And then people start having things like what you'll hear called leaky gut, and things start crossing the barrier that shouldn't be. And so we're demanding a lot of our immune system, and that causes low-grade inflammation. And we will dive into a little bit more. Over time, when that system wears down, I think it's important to understand the connection. So dysbiosis just means imbalance. And when your microbiome gets imbalanced, it can show up in many other organ systems, because if I had to pick one system as an occupational therapist that if somebody focused on improving it, it would benefit the majority of their body, it's your gut. And so your gut is connected to all of these other organ systems. And I think it's so fascinating. Again, I mentioned earlier, we kind of go to different doctors for different things. And we typically tend to go to this doctor for the brain and this doctor for the skin and this doctor for the hormones. But the reality is that our biology does not operate in silos. Our gut is a communication hub, and it sends signals through the immune system, our hormones, our metabolites, and our nervous system. And so when it is out of balance, now inflammation rises, and the symptoms are going to show up wherever your body is most vulnerable, and often where your genetics load the gun. So if your environment pulls the trigger, like genetics loads the gun and environment pulls the trigger. So for me, I have a genetic predisposition to having a compromised colon and having colon cancers down the line. So this showed up for me pretty early on as a baby. For some people, it might look like brain fog. For others, it might be skin issues, hormone shifts. The gut is not just about digesting your food. It influences how your whole body responds. And so just to zoom in a little bit on those organ systems, here are some symptoms that could be trying to communicate that there is an imbalance with you. So I just kind of want you guys to take a good look over. Feel free to take a screenshot. And you can put in the chat if you want. You don't have to, but like, how many of these have you dealt with? Are you dealing with? Are there any that surprise you, have a direct link to the gut? So I think that's pretty impressive. And here's why, right? We have this perfect storm for causing all of these gut imbalances. When I showed you guys that illustration, like The problem is we have a weak microbiome and we lack diversity. And so we're going to zoom out because a few generations ago, life naturally supported our biology. Movement was outside, food was recognizable, people spent more time outdoors and with community. And now we live in convenience, speed, and in constant stimulation. We're indoors more, screens replace shared experiences, added sugar is incredibly high, ultra processed foods are dominant in our diets, and our nervous system stays activated, and all of this changes our digestion. It puts us in a state we call fight or flight. And when our body is in fight or flight, it does not prioritize rest and digest. And another way that our body is speaking to us is through our stools. And so this, I actually showed my kids this and they're like, oh, mom, I don't want to look at that. But I want to normalize this. I think it's important for us to understand what normal is. What is normal to you may not be normal, or what is normal to your child may not be normal. Like, have this conversation with your kids, see where they even are, because it is a telltale sign of what might be going on. It is feedback. It tells us about hydration, fiber intake, microbial balance, digestion, and transit time. So if you are at type 3 or 4, that is the sweet spot. Types 1 and 2 often mean that we're constipated, we need more hydration, more movement, and fiber. Types 5 and 7 usually mean that things are moving too quickly through us, which can reduce the amount of nutrition we're actually absorbing. And it points back to needing more fiber and calming some inflammation. So I think this is really impactful for us to understand. I also think it's important to understand that we don't start life with a fully developed microbiome. It begins developing at birth when we go through the birth canal. And it is shaped by early exposures, including breast milk. That's like prebiotic for the baby. And another reason it's just so powerful for babes to breastfeed on mom when at all possible. And it evolves with us through our life. And like our muscle mass, our microbe diversity often declines with age unless we're very intentional about it. And that's one reason that babies and older adults are often called more vulnerable in our population. The microbiome isn't just something that we have, it is something that we need to be conscientious and build. And the hopeful part is that our microbiomes are so forgiving. They really are. We can start to shift in as little as 3 to 5 days. The gut barrier is one of the fastest renewing systems in our entire body. So yes, what the little topics you guys see here are sleep matters, sunlight matters, movement matters, and regulating your nervous system matters. All of those things can have an improvement to those microbes and the gut lining. And speaking of the nervous system here, I actually have a couple of tips for you guys tonight. Sometimes we can be eating the right things and doing the right things, but if your nervous system is dysregulated, it impacts digestion more than you realize. So a really helpful tip is that before meals is to take 4 slow breaths. It sounds super simple, but it signals to your body that you're safe and can help to put you in that state of rest and digest. Going for a short walk after meals can also help to regulate that nervous system, and it helps to reduce the blood sugar spike, which supports digestion. Some people call them going for fart walks, which honestly, if it helps, I'm in. And singing or humming shifts your nervous system too. So belting it out in the shower or the car, all of it counts. But our biggest lever that we can pull is our nutrition. And so we're going to talk about it. In Dr. Will's book, he talks about the 4 workhorse nutrients. These are the 4 levers that can make the biggest difference in your microbiome. And they're honestly the things that we're often most deficient in. So we've already talked about how your body constantly, or it responds to what you constantly feed it. So let's talk. The first one is fiber. We're aiming to roughly get between 25 to 38 grams of fiber a day. So 25 for women, 38 grams for men. And that's minimum, right? So we don't want to be minimum. So I would say 25 or more, 38 grams or more. For kiddos, the target is about 4 grams more than their age, right? So if you're 8, you want to shoot for about 12 grams per day. But typically Americans fall far short. And you can see on my list here, fiber is made up of things like beans and lentils, oats and quinoa, chia and flaxseed. It comes from fruits and veggies. But certain things, and we have tools today like AI and Chat GPT, so you could talk with your AI and let it know how many grams of fiber you're trying to get. Let it know the kind of things you like to eat, and it can help you to come up with a strategy. But fiber is one of the primary prebiotic inputs, and I'm going to define for you guys in a little bit what a prebiotic is. But it helps to strengthen that gut barrier, that one cell wall. And a practical shortcut is really just eat a wide variety of plants, because if you sometimes aiming for a target like 25 grams, you kind of don't know what that looks like. So really just eating a lot of plants will help you to hit that target. And that leads me to the polyphenols. Polyphenols are really the colors that make up fruits and vegetables. And they are a different form of a prebiotic. So you need both the fiber and the polyphenols. And both of those are going to feed things that we call probiotics. But this is where plant diversity becomes powerful, because one of the largest gut studies ever done showed those who had a diversity of 30 different plants in a week had the greatest microbial diversity. So instead of obsessing over perfection, you guys can simply count plants. And so increase your variety and your body is going to follow. This is fun. So that kind of breaks down to 5 or 6 servings of fruits or veggies a day, but have fun with it. And I want you to know that like servings vary. If you're talking about herbs and spices, that's going to be a much smaller amount than like a whole piece of fruit or a whole vegetable. So I think one of the greatest ways to get polyphenols and fiber are things where you can put multi-ingredients in. So salads, soups, stews, chilies, just a way to add a whole lot of fruits and veggies. Also smoothies. The third one is healthy fats. So we want to aim for about 2 to 4 servings per day from sources like olive oil, nuts, seeds, and omega-3 rich foods. These support cell membrane integrity, your hormone signaling, and they help regulate that inflammatory pathway, especially when you combine them with eating all those plants we just talked about. And lastly, fermented foods. This is like no longer part of our modern diet, and it once was. Many other cultures have fermented foods in their diet on a daily basis. So we want to aim for about 3 to 6 servings a day. And these are probiotic foods. Fermented foods are probiotic foods, and they have the live bacteria inside of them. And the largest study done so far on fermented foods showed that participants who consumed 6 servings of fermented foods had the greatest amount of microbial diversity and reductions of inflammatory markers. So the biggest takeaway is no matter what your eating lifestyle is, whether it's vegan, vegetarian, paleo, Mediterranean, there's really not a one size fits all when it comes to diet. But a lot of those diets that I just mentioned, and I'll throw in like pescatarian as well, they all have these 4 foundations as a part of their eating lifestyle. So there's not really just one right way to eat, but the diets that show the greatest increase in your longevity all have these 4 components as a part of it. But here's the reality. Let's be realistic. This is where the OT in me really starts to show up. Most people are not hitting the basic fruit and veggie targets. Excuse me. Only 1 in 10 Americans meet vegetable intake recommendation. Only 12% meet fruit intake guidelines. 95% Americans are not consuming enough fiber. This is the problem. So when someone's struggling with digestion, energy, inflammation, cravings, I don't assume that they're broken. I want to know what their inputs are. I want to see what they're eating or not eating. This isn't a personal failure. It really is a modern environment problem. And when the environment creates barriers, it's important for us to have supports. Not that we need supports to replace real food, but it's to bridge the gap between what we are eating and what we need to be getting on a daily basis. And I want to mention pre, pro, and postbiotics because once upon a time, I thought they were kind of like 3 totally different things. But the reality is the prebiotics are the plant fibers. They are the polyphenols and they're the fuel. They feed the good bacteria. The good bacteria are probiotics And then when the probiotics eat prebiotics, they create these beneficial short chain fatty acids called, there's three different ones of them. You don't have to know what they are, but they're butyrate, propionate, and acetate. And they all do different functions to help to heal the gut lining. So I have this picture of sourdough in the back because I think there's a lot of us who, have picked up the fad of making sourdough or the habit, I should say. And you know that when you start, you have what we call the mother or the starter, and it's the fermented part of the dough. And we typically feed it with a quarter cup of flour and some warm water. And then you see it double and bubble in size. So that fermented dough, right? That's your probiotic. And then when you feed it the flour, that's the prebiotic. And then it doubles and bubbles inside. And all of those bubbles that you see in that growth, those are the chemical reactions, those are the postbiotics. So I think it's an important visual because when you are starting to have more of those four workhorse nutrients into your diet, you might feel some rumbling in your stomach. You might have some more gas. You might burp a little bit. And I want to let you know that is a good thing. I definitely don't want it to be of distress to you. So if it is, then go slow and low, like lower the amount you're intaking and go slower. But know that that is what's happening in your system is likely you're feeding probiotics that you haven't fed in a really long time. And it's growing these new probiotics. And again, that diversity matters and you want to have an abundance. So know that gas is good. Many people, because there's this gap that we talked about a second ago, they turn to supplements, and rightfully so. And so gut health, because it is such a trend right now, and it is a highly competitive market, 88% of the products that exist today are probiotics. But people get frustrated, and 2/3 have no noticeable benefit from taking them. And that's because most gut are just probiotics. So we already talked about that they're missing a piece of the puzzle, right? Gut health is not hype. It's just that people are missing a piece of the puzzle when they take just one of those parts. Another thing that people don't realize is that probiotics are actually pretty fragile nutrients. They have to survive the stomach acid before they ever reach the large intestine. But many simply do not make it that far. And even when they do arrive, another challenge shows up is if that environment wasn't prepared with prebiotics, those probiotics may arrive, but they don't necessarily stay. They might sprout, but they don't fully grow because without proper prebiotic support, there's not enough fuel to sustain them. And so they just pass through you. So it's not just about adding the bacteria, it's about creating the conditions to help them to survive, thrive, and do their job. And so this market has been needed to be disrupted for a really long time. And Brandy mentioned at the beginning that I am a partner with the Juice Plus company, and I have been going on 23 years next month. And as an occupational therapist, I do recommend a lot of wellness tools to people, but there's only one company that I've stayed with that long or this long. I wasn't looking for a brand. I wasn't looking for a business. I really was trying to feel better. Because of how I started life at 25 years old, I was on 8 prescription medications, mostly for asthma and allergies, but I also had an anxiety medication. And I was a vitamin junkie, but nothing ever really truly made a noticeable difference. So I was introduced to the plant powders, the fruit and veggie powders from the Juice Plus company. And I really liked how simple it was. It wasn't perfection. It was just about closing a gap. I knew I wasn't eating as many fruits and vegetables as I needed to be on a daily basis. And truly, within 6 months, working with my physician, I was able to get off all of my medications. And what changed was not just what I was taking, it was that I actually was becoming educated, kind of like you guys are tonight. I learned more. I started changing my actual eating habits, and my awareness changed, and my relationship with my health became far more empowered. And so I want to share with you kind of the evolution of an expansion of our plant powdered support. So I started just with the fruit and veggie. The berry came out shortly after I became a partner. So now you're getting the full color spectrum and diversity of plants. A little bit after that, the omegas came out, and these are a plant-based omega. So fish don't actually make omegas. Fish eat seaweed and algae, and they carry it just via the food chain. And so this company bypassed the fish and went straight to the algae source. Algae is one of the highest nutrient sources of omegas. And so this covers the healthy fat, category we talked about a little bit ago. So we have the polyphenols, we have the healthy fats. Um, some people have what we call capsule fatigue. And so the company came out with just a year and a half ago, superfood powder. So it's those same fruit, veggie, berry powders in a drink format that my kids love. And then fast forward, this has been out maybe a year and a half as well, Luminate. So these are more prebiotics. This is just in the mushroom and herb category. These are called nootropics and adaptogens. It's a drink that helps with cognition, with energy, with mood, that gut brain connection. And it was almost like we have had so many benefits from that product line. We have almost 50 clinical studies showing that not only do those products get in, and primarily the fruit, veggie, berry I'm speaking to, get into your bloodstream, but once they get inside your bloodstream, they're proven to have these beneficial outcomes. And that really is what set us apart from the very beginning. And that, as an occupational therapist, gave me the confidence to be able to share this with other people, knowing that it's not just great stories or testimonies, but they actually had clinical support. I think it's phenomenal. You can see some of the things we've talked about, that this is shown to improve your immune support. It's shown to reduce inflammation, protect DNA, support cardiovascular health and metabolism.
Alexa,
sorry about that.
call 7.
Brandy, can you? Okay. And we knew that these outcomes were happening for years, largely through the lens of antioxidants and those polyphenols. We knew fruits and vegetables reduce the risk of disease. And we knew that antioxidants help to buffer oxidative stress. And all of that is still true. But what we're beginning to understand more now is how much of an impact may be being mediated through the gut with those polyphenols. So these products were already supporting this system. We didn't have the complete picture, though, just yet. And so just this last September, Juice Plus launched Superbiome. And so this is a two-step system, pre and probiotic. The prebiotic provides some gentle fibers, and the probiotic provides 9 different strains of probiotics. So I'm going to show those to you. If you are a research person like I am, feel free to take a screenshot and feel free to throw it in the AI of your choice and ask what kind of clinical outcomes or improvements have been shown with these strains of probiotics, because they are quite studied. So you're getting 20 billion, CFU just stands for colony forming units of these probiotics. So these 9 were very specifically picked. This product has been 20 years in the making. Secondly, you get the prebiotic fibers. So these are a blend of 6 different prebiotic fibers from things that most of us are not eating on a daily basis. So Jerusalem artichoke, chicory roots, acacia fiber, and you can see the others. But not all fibers feed all probiotics the same. So they kind of have partners. And so again, these 6 were very specifically picked because of their clinical outcomes and how they match up with those probiotics, and they produce specific postbiotics. And so they're not only driving innate microbiome growth, which just means that the microbiome, the bacteria you already have there, but it's also driving the growth of the probiotic family that you're introducing with the product. Again, postbiotics help with that barrier function, with immune reduced inflammation, and cognitive, mood, and appetite control. And so one of those postbiotics, called propionate, has also been associated with glucose regulation and weight management. This product hasn't been out that long, but I have lost count of the number of people who've told me they've lost a couple pounds having started this, because the amount of inflammation, especially around their midsection, is noticeable to them. And so for me, this got really personal this last summer. My oldest son had just graduated from high school, and I take them once a year to a dermatologist just for a well visit. And she prescribed Owen an antibiotic for a little bit of acne that he had, and I regret having filled it. But within a week of taking that antibiotic, his gut was completely wrecked. He had bloody stools, and we spent the summer trying to figure out what was going on and why he was having this and how we could fix it. We did functional labs, traditional GI, colonoscopy, acupuncture, herbs, everything. And 3 days before I took him to college, he was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And no mom wants to send her child to college to share a dorm room when he's dealing with urgency, frequency, and accidents. It really was terrifying. We were told that the biologic medication that he started took about 8 weeks for it to really show a difference. And so I had put Owen proactively on a pre and probiotic from a different company because I knew I needed to check that box and I knew he needed support. And it's not that that product hurt him in any capacity because it didn't, but it also didn't move the needle at all in improving his health. The Juice Plus company was so kind because they knew what Owen was walking through that they sent him this product before it was ever out on the market. And in 5 days, he went from 3 months of having completely water stools and having lost 30 pounds to having completely normal stools. So on that Bristol stool scale, he went from having 7 for over 3 months to 3 to 4. And here we are. We're in March now. That's crazy. But Owen did a follow up colonoscopy just 3 months into his diagnosis. So in December, he had a follow up and they repeated the biopsy and they declared that he was in complete remission and the biopsy was benign. And they said if they didn't know he had Crohn's, they would have never been able to tell. And I believe that the medication he's taking is helping. And I'm grateful for modern medicine, but I'm equally grateful to have been able to support his gut so powerfully with the nutritional supports of Juice Plus. So for me, at the same time, I had just come off of a hip replacement and had my own compromised microbiome because I had to take pain medications and antibiotics for the surgery. And I was just dealing with stress of healing from that, as well as what Owen was walking through and sending my first son off to college. So my stress was high and inflammation was as well. Even so, or even had an allergic reaction actually this past summer. I ate some poultry, which at the time I hadn't had a flare up for eating poultry in a really long time, but I had to EpiPen myself this summer because of a reaction. So this is talking about like our microbiomes are very dynamic. And so I was in a state that wasn't prepared to handle something that was a known trigger for me in my childhood, in my past. And so after I EpiPenned, then I ended up having this gum swelling and cheek lining issues, and I got a weird rash on my leg. I refused antibiotics because I knew that was just going to add to the problem and wasn't going to solve it. And that is when I started Superbiome. So those skin and mouth issues cleared within 2 weeks. And then I noticed something else. So I've been an avid CrossFitter for 17 years. I eat very clean and exercise is very important to me. Obviously, I had to like change the way that I worked out post hip replacement, which is humbling. And I'm in perimenopause season of life, so that just adds to it. But I caught my reflection in the mirror one day and I noticed my abs. And I'm one of those people that have done a lot of things and sometimes wondered why I wasn't getting the results that I thought all my hard work and effort should be showing me. And finally, like with Superbiome, I feel like it helped to put my microbiome in homeostasis or in balance so that I could better break down the food I was taking. I was better breaking down all the protein that I was taking. And so my muscles were growing and my inflammation was going down and it physically showed up on my body. And so I show this not to brag, but to kind of show you the process of when you put your body in a better state, it can respond better. And so, if you guys take nothing away from tonight, I want you to know your symptoms are not random. This is communication, and I want you to hear what your body's trying to say to you. Gut health is not a side topic, it is a foundation. And you don't need to be perfect. You just need to understand the pattern and you need to support your biology. So, start with the basics, start with plant diversity, fiber as your daily fuel, lots of fruits and veggies for polyphenols, healthy fats, fermented foods calm your nervous system. And if you need help to bridge the gap, then absolutely get with the person who invited you to be on this event tonight and learn more about the Juice Plus product line. And so, Brandy, I am going to hand it back to you because I know you got something special to offer.